So hello, I'm so delighted that Katreni is back with me today. So we haven't met for a while, but today we're going to be looking at this once in a lifetime event. We have Uranus conjunct the North Node. Mars is there at the moment as well. And this is all happening in gene key 2, which is the pure yin codon. So we're going to be looking at a synthesis of astrology, and Katreni will bring in more the human design side. We're going to be looking at the asteroids that are also there in conjunction, and we're going to see what else wants to weave its way into this conversation. So I'll just invite you in to say hello, Katreni, before I show the chart.
Hi, Alison. Hi, everyone. I'm looking forward to dive into today. I'm glad to finally be in civilization and zooming.
Yeah. Okay, so let's share the chart for today. Okay. It's quite big, but I'm going to pull it up to, well, this is actually the chart for the 1st of August when this this conjunction started, depending on whether you're using the mean nodes or the true nodes. So this is when the true nodes came conjunct. So you can see here that they're at 18 degrees of Taurus. This is the North Node. So the North Node is a pure flow of neutrinos, and it's moving towards our karmic destiny. Then we have Mars. So Mars brings in energy and passion. And then we have Uranus. This is a planet of breaking free, of revolutionary change. So it's like, wow, what is going to happen when this comes online? So just to share a couple of things, this is from the perspective of the British Isles. These may not, well, one anyway, may not be particularly stories in other countries, but the European women's football has been incredible because I'm not really into football, but overnight the women's game has equalized with the men's game. Like there was full BBC coverage. The women's final, which England happened to win, was the largest crowd ever in Wembley. And there was a lot of commentators saying how excellent it was, and a lot of male support for the female game, like coming up to this equal level with the male game. So that was interesting there with Mars there, because Mars could evoke that kind of sporting energy. The other thing I feel is really significant is the Pope's visit to Canada and his apology to the Indigenous people of Canada for the way that they were treated. And one of the Trans-Neptunian objects that is in this conjunction is Albion. So I'm going to talk more about this whole colonization story in a bit more depth later on. And yeah, just in my town there was a huge fire. This fire just took out a whole restaurant and office block, and it was kind of very quick, this fire. So that's that kind of energy. It can be positive things, it can be negative things, but there's going to be big change whatever's going on. So yeah, be interesting to find out like stories from other countries and how this is affecting things. But I think because Albion is the first trans-Neptunian object, and Albion is the ancient name for Britain, and especially Scotland, actually. So I feel that Britain has a kind of is a kind of portal place that we might see a special lens on what's going on right now. Okay, so I'm going to invite Katreni in to talk about this from a human design point of view, and also about the recent nodal shift that's taken place and what that actually means for us right now. So I'll hand over the mic to you, Katreni.
Thanks, Alison. Well, and maybe I'll also share the screen. First of all, I have actually very many things to share. So Alison, weave in. Yeah. Here is the mandala of the 64 and the quarters. They're in Cyrillics here, but we just need to look at the body graph and the planets in certain positions, in certain hexagrams. So I just want to say that we've been for like since March, I think, in the nodal nodes positions of 2343, which was forming the ajna and the throat, connecting ajna and the throat in the channel of structuring. So just on the 30th July, it was the last day of this transits where we arrived in the first line of this two positions, which form a channel of structuring. So since March, we were in this kind of simplifying, structuring, connecting with one's own, I don't know, acoustic knowing, with our own third eye, acoustic third eye access within us. And we arrived in the first line. So we kind of were going from the sixth line into the first line, which always happens with the moon nodes. We always go from the sixth into the first. On the contrary, with the sun earth, which move from first line to the sixth line. And on the wheel 2343, this is a programming partners, which happen to form a channel. So we kind of arrived at the basis of certain, I don't know, inner structure and of certain breakthroughs that like came to us during this period of also of the whole summer. Was two elements, the earth, the inner earth, the receptive, and the mountain for 8 weeks, grounding into restrained and finding the point, the emanation point before all cycles is grounding in no fear thing, which is all about mountain thing. So today is the last transit, the 33, the sun is in the 33 here. We're kind of finishing the quarter, finishing the mountain season, finishing the whole summer, and also finishing the cycle that the nodes been in. So we kind of got to certain inner structure within. And so you can see, yeah, the sun, it was in the 31st, now it's in the 33 here. And everything moves counterclockwise, the whole planets, and the nodes move clockwise. And so they shifted, they were in 2343, and now they shifted into the second and the first one. And so this is the old picture of, we had very defined head, very defined throat, very defined ajna, like kind of sticking to mental processes a lot as well. And now we're kind of again into this receptive space where collective doesn't have anymore its ajna defined. And yeah, wait a second.
Could I just pop in and say something before we move on to the 2-1 axis? What's really fascinating is this thing about the structuring, because I've been in a contemplation with my group where we've been following the sun through these mountain hexagrams. So the 53 is like that superabundance of, it's like the consciousness of the universe that is within everything. Then we moved into the 62, which is like the coding language that resides inside this consciousness. Then the 56 is about intoxication, so this like loving relationship with source, with this consciousness and with this code, if you like. Then we have the 31 of leadership, and you know, the question of how do we lead people out of the Maya through our language, through our way of being. And I know you are a Maya guide, Katreni, and I'm really understanding that in a new way, actually, in through this contemplation. And then the 33 is all about the sanskaras and how we mindfully purify our karma. So for me, it's quite amazing, actually, that this we've had this structuring kind of supporting and adjusting our whole way of being through, it feels like that to me, through this transit, like a big purification of, you know, how we use language, and but it's more than language, you know, it's tone, it's and it's interesting, it's in the throat as well. So yeah, I just wanted to share that before we jump into the 1 and 2 axis. We're being prepared.
Yeah, that's what I want to talk as well. But yeah, 2343 is like structuring the whole metamorphosis, which is all about throat, and most of the gates of the throat are, first of all, in this quarter of civilization. So, and in the summer period from beginning of May until the August. So it's like 35, 16, 28, 23, where the nodes were as well, 50, like 62, 56, 31, 33, which are the stop codons. So we've been structured into the form and simplicity of the form, and also a lot of rooting happening. So the throat is kind of representing as well the square, and it's connected to the Muladhara, to the root thing, because 52 is the archetype, and like it represents the root and the mountain. And all the throats, most of the throats gate, they're either receptive, about receptivity, about the yin quality, about being empty inside, and the root is all about like think before you speak, root into the space of no fear before you like initiate any kind of process. So most of the processes, metamorphic processes of the throat, are about being embodied and communicate from this embodied, very rooted space. So this is the period, and I feel like 2343, which also contain the mountain and the yin quality, the earth. The 23 is a combination of these two elements in itself. So I guess that's what most of the breakthroughs were, at least for me in this period of time, is like how to go into the space of no fear, how to be receptive, how to learn to be receptive, how to ground oneself, and what's communication for me is really about. So yeah, and the notes shifted like today, the 3rd August, and we can see that the node shifted here south in the first hexagram, which is the most yang one, all the yang lines, and the second, the whole yin lines. So, and we will start next quarter from the 2nd gate, 7th gate, which is all about the river and inner leadership and being an alpha. And this quarter is all about relationships, but in the homogenized programs, it's about relationship with the other, how to reproduce, how to find a partner, and the mind is busy with that through the survival thing. Like, and actually the 7th gate is all about how to be the leader within oneself and how to be here now, which is the river element is about, is going from the frustration of past and future and accepting and being decisive and devotional to what I feel within now. And a 7th gate, which programs the whole quarter, is about being receptive. So alpha is about being receptive and is about leading oneself and leading oneself in relationship with oneself first and most. And then the other is just a mirror of yours own relationship with oneself. So I feel 2nd and 1st programming partners and gates and chemistry, which gonna be there for a really long time. It's gonna be there until 26th of November 2022. So this is a program for really, really long, as nodes are really about environment, and it's a program that sets the stage for the collective environment for really not just like 1-2 months, but like 3-4 months ahead. And we get used to it, and we go through a certain process as a collective, and then the river goes like and shifts. So the lunar nodes shift, and then we suddenly like, okay, what's happening? Like we turned into some other thing. So it's kind of knowing that about this weather, because sun moves really quickly, 6 days in a row, and lunar nodes stay there for a really long time. So they're kind of really what's our attention should come back time after time to understand. And especially if you have other gates that connect to it, for example, 8 gate, because then the south node will connect to the 8 gate, and or you have 14th gate hanging. And it's also as 4323, it's about this individual chemistry, which is all about self-empowerment. And first, the 2nd gate, most of all, it's about direction in life. It's Sphinx gate of the G center. So 1st, 2nd, 7th, 13th are the Sphinx gate of the G, and they also form this trident, Neptunian trident, 7, 1, 13, and 2nd gate. And now 1st and 2nd are activated. You can see this beautiful yellow spider, which is all about the G center gates. So gate 2nd is
that. I just have to say I love that.
Yeah, and it's a huge things that are going on now. And I feel there, as Alison, you've also said, they're preparing us for the future, and I want to unfold this one, what they are preparing us for exactly, actually. So it's direction in life. So basically what's going to happen until the 26th of November, we are moving from the 6th line. Lunar nodes are in the 6th line now, and we move slowly through all the lines into the 1st line, where we're going to appear on the 26th of November. We're going to hit the 1st line, the basis of our direction in life. And now 6th line is all about this, how to say, sixth line always looks into like what's coming, certain progress, like it's sixth line is all about this objective observation, and also the key word for the sixth line is trust. So basically what we start with is like, okay, how we can trust this planetary shift that's coming and how it prepares us for as well 2027, because those are the locks, as we know, the spider locks, which never change in the global consciousness program. So this lunar node in this period of time gonna prepare us for what's coming also in 2027. I will talk that later, but now it's like to see that this sixth line trust is like how I can trust new direction of life on Earth that's happening, and the shift that's going to happen now, and also my unique individual direction. Second and first gates are about this unique creative potential, unique direction of my unique form that moves in space, and away from the homogeneous life and away from this collective agenda, mind controlling agenda as well, that's going to be probably starting from September be forced on us. So how during these times I navigate via my form and follow my unique direction, on the contrary to the homogenized direction. But also how I trust this global consciousness program of the lunar nodes that prepare us for the shift, and how we can see the shifts that's happening as well. So last words before I pause for Alison to comment on that is that gate second is the driver of the global consciousness program. It's also so-called magnetic monopole in the G center. So it's a gate of direction, and the driver, our unique driver within our body in the sternum, but also when we look at the wheel, we understand that we are part and we are the whole. So it's about this driver of the global consciousness program that happens through the second gate, the receptive, and also driver of the evolutionary path of humanity. So it's kind of, we're gonna see that. And gate first, the most young gate, the creative in the I Ching, it's called. It's about being an example in the world. It's about being this contemplator of the world, being the creator, free, sovereign creator, unique creator of one's own form. And basically it's about being different, and deeply creative, and transform one's own entropy into freshness and into beauty. This is the heaven, double heaven hexagram, and this is double earth hexagram. It's about about the light, the shining of the light, and accepting, allowing one's entropy to be transformed into the beauty of the heavens, into this light. And second is all about this, let's say, dark feminine as well, about wilderness and about finding one's own empty inner axis, which is not about trying to orient oneself and finding the ground. Actually, the earth is not about finding the ground. The earth is about how I can navigate in the emptiness, and how my own inner receptivity and this inner axis of emptiness can help me to navigate. So in order to orient, one doesn't need to be grounded. In order to orient, one needs to be receptive. One needs to realize that we are the form principle. So being an example in the world, and both of which is in the 6th line. So it's about trusting, starting from the trusting and moving towards the November and finding one's own baseline, so to say. So here I pause and we move.
Okay, lovely. If you stop sharing, because I want to just share my chart again. Well, firstly to say on that gift of orientation of the two, my experience and what I'm seeing with people around me is this ever deepening loosening of the sanskaras, the deep karmic memories that we carry. And as we kind of are released from the Maya, whether that's around money or our families, there seems to be a trend towards kind of a detachment of our biological families, as if, you know, that we're able to now step outside of these very deep karmic patterns where we're not able to bring people with us at this point, but we're able to kind of step out of it at a different level, and that facilitates our orientation, which may even appear selfish to some of our relatives. You know? So it's like, no, come back and keep playing this game with us, you know, don't go off and do your thing. So then the city of unity, I'm just kind of thinking of all this actually as we speak, but what's been coming through the last week is this huge kind of download of Trans-Neptunian objects. So these objects, they also called Kuiper Belt objects. They're right on the edge out by Pluto in the solar system. And they're bringing in a new quantum consciousness. The first one to be found in 2005 was Albion, actually, who is in Gene-Key 2 line 1. So that's going to be really activated in November. As I mentioned earlier, Albion is the ancient name for Scotland. So I'm immediately thinking I must plan a trip and meet some of my Gene-Key sisters in Scotland at this time. Yeah, but all these bodies, they're about unity consciousness. So let me point out a few. So we've got Varuna here. He's a Vedic deity. He's a sky god, but he lives in the water, and he's a judge as well. I think he's connected with the 17-18 axis because he makes judgments, but he's got this peacock tail on his dragon that has the 100 eyes that see everything from that omniscient perspective, which is the 17. So when he makes a judgment, he does it from considering everything, which is why he makes very good judgments. In Gene-Key 45 at the moment, so this is a leadership key, the 45. It's the gift of synergy, the city of communion. And we have Algira, who's Aboriginal deity. And we have Gukun, I can't pronounce her full name, but she's a San of Southern Africa. So what's interesting to me is these are the oldest tribes that we know of on the earth, the Aboriginal people and the San, the hunter-gatherer people. You know, they live in the dream time. And I feel this is like the whole dream arc that's coming through the gene keys is like a contemporary unity consciousness that the Aboriginals and San particularly hold in their relationship to the animal kingdoms and the plant kingdoms. So I mentioned Albion already, and then the final one is Teheran Hayawaku, who is in the Iroquois creation story, and he creates the plants, the animals, the first human beings. But he has this dark brother, Sewaswati, something like that. And what's interesting about this story that stands out to me is how jealousy and envy distort and corrupt our field. They're very dangerous things, envy and jealousy. So, but yeah, so Teheran Wayawaku is also in Jinki 22, which is the divine feminine transmission. So it feels very much connected with this too. So I'm actually going to be running a course on this over August and into early September. So on each of these Trans-Neptunian objects. So I'll put my email in the thing if you want to email me about them. But they all feel like they're pushing us towards unity consciousness in their sort of unique ways. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. And it might not be that everyone's unified. It feels like, you know, there's kind of the separating off in a way of people orientating in one direction and then people still being really stuck in the Maya. And ultimately, it's all connected, isn't it? And there will be freedom eventually for everyone, but we don't know the time scales of that. Yeah, so back to you, Katreni, for now.
Yeah, I feel this separation and maturation that's happening, and separation from the mother principle, and not in a bad way, but it's time, like the cycle is finishing and it's time for us to separate in order to mature and like stop like grabbing and like keeping sucking the milk. It's like, okay, we are heading towards something, and we have to do that individually, and we have to find our own direction, and whether within our synarchy or not yet, depending on where we are and whether we've already met our synarchical brothers and sisters, like people with whom we resonate. And there is lots of cracks, but I feel like those cracks are not to be kintsugi, are not here to be kind of melted back together. Those cracks are actually healing cracks. Like this is the first time I feel like this cracking within the family or with some members of the family or with the mother, real mother, or like the mother principle, like that's something that like that's there outside for us. It's actually something very, very healthy, and those cracks are the paths we navigate and find our own direction rather. So it's like it's our ground now, like we move through these cracks, and without trying to repair it, we let it go and we find space in those cracks. So I also really love what started to come regarding this female principle. And Richard, some time ago, he went with this audio about the wilderness, and he was talking about his garden and that he like allows it to be wild, so life can come back in it. And I really like this principle of that actually between the two poles, the masculine pole and the feminine pole within us, and this union of masculine feminine, and that it's actually not 50-50. I mean, in our symmetrical body, it might be 50-50, but actually the real percentage is like 33% of the structure, and the 66 is the wilderness. And this is the same as the universe. Universe is not God. Universe is this dark matter, and the God is this creative principle within it. So it's like, it's not really half-half. And it's really needs a right brain to crack this new formula and to start heal as well the dark principle within us, which we afraid, which we project on, and allowing it to take space and to take hold of our garden, so life comes into those places which were like not fertile before, and the creatures can start coming back and bring its own kind of laws. Yeah, let's talk about Artemis.
Yeah, when you were talking about wildness, Artemis, and also, you know, Artemis is very androgynous because she's not married, she's independent. She does a lot of things that are traditionally allocated to the male, you know, like archery and running and and all of that kind of thing. So Artemis is actually in Gene Key 2, line 6 at the moment. So this is exactly in conjunction with that 18 degrees Taurus with Uranus, Mars, and the North Node. So this is this wild energy coming through. And the way that was expressed for me, in the dream arc, I got the golden plover bird, which is actually very significant to me. And it invited me to go on a night quest, which I did. I planned it actually for last Sunday, the 31st, not realizing at the time this is when the exact conjunction happened. So it was quite amazing to just 10 o'clock at night put on my rucksack, my sleeping bag, and walk out into the night. And yeah, and I slept by a river, and the stars were all bright, and it's just like the space just kept deepening into the stars, and the water, it's like I could hear more and more depth and space in the water, the river, through the night. And actually, as the dawn broke, there was a star on the horizon. I think it's called Russ Hagel, but anyway, it's the head of Ophiuchus, the healer, was this bright star looking at me, like beaming down at me. So I really felt like my Artemis came out in that, and then a friend was talking about how she went canoeing on the river where she lives in Florida with alligators in the water. And I was like, I wonder if there's something bringing out the wildness in us, you know. And there's Artemis then, so she's an explanation. And I know you've been doing some amazing walking in the wilds of Siberia, so I don't know if you want to say a bit about if your Artemis has been activated, Katreni.
Thanks, Alison. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, Artemis also reminds me of Pallas Athena as well, this very Amazonian-like women, and yeah, leadership, in whom leadership was awoke. I had lots of walks, and I had 9 weeks through the south of Caucasus, and then the Urals, and then I was 6 weeks in Siberia and in some wild places. And many things were happening, like the dreamer creatures were coming, and that was very real magic and medicine that they were proposing. And one of the most important things, except that I was doing this grid work and like walking around certain places and communicate, and some creatures were communicating with me, like the spider and the locust and the cicada, or how you call it, cicada, and like all these very powerful insects and low, like underground creatures, like bringing it medicine for me. What I really was surprised with, because I had lots of somatic work and sessions while I was kind of in a place where we had some somatic retreats, and I had an incredible power that was brought by the dream arc into my somatic sessions and the spirit animals that were starting to awake within human bodies. What I've noticed regarding this pattern of the wildness, and also the dynamic of the masculine feminine, the dynamic of the first hexagram and the second hexagram archetype is, and the sternum, is that many bodies have so much anger, like that was there collected in the sternum and in the breast and in the upper body, in the arms and the throat, this kind of upper body structure that was, how to say, that was completely not forgotten, but gave away the power. And lots of anger was coming through this receptiveness of the body of the second gate. There was this huge amounts of anger, of cry, of taking back one's power, one's wildness, and one's body back. And it comes through this enormous amount of anger and cry and rage. And that was really powerful in the session, that this emotional and anger was able to come out finally, and the sternum kind of found its place, and the breast found its kind of place, and there is this inner value that was restored, and inner self-confidence, and this female principle that's really kind of knows about the boundaries and the healthy self-esteem, and kind of finishing the contracts of giving away one's body for something or for someone, and like taking it back, taking this back, taking my body back. And only when this happens, like taking my blood and my energy and my nourishment back, and my putting my sternum into its place together with the breast and the power of the arms and the wings, this mythology comes and starts the healing of inner masculine and feminine. And this is what happened for me. Like I finally restored my masculine power through taking my feminine power, and not as an aggressive, but this rage is rather about eros for me. So for me, anger is eros, and being able to express anger and is being able to connect with one's own eros and with one's own healed poles. And then the peace comes and the groundedness comes. But this rage is actually about eros, and about sternum, and actually about receptivity, and not collecting and not giving oneself away, but finding one's own chest, one's own kingdom, and the merging of the two. And that was pretty amazing to feel within myself finally, because I've been heading towards this place for a really long time, and being able to restore this inner Artemis and Pallas Athenas in the others, and not a warrior that kind of goes into the war and loses people, loses beloved, loses oneself, but even after the loss, being able to say, I'm going to leave, I'm not going to die, and I'm not going to buy into dying for something. I'm going to continue living my life and continue nourishing my body. And that really brings incredible harmony into the corrupted structures that are present in the body. So yeah, that was my Siberian journey. Actually, it had lots of bodies and lots of sessions that were just so remarkable and incredible regarding restoring mythology and spirit animals and body parts and sternum, especially the sternum, especially the breast, especially the arms and power of the arms, and the voice, and expressing the voice and crying out what needs to be cried out, and restoring the eros and the rage, the sacred rage. That's usually projected on, oh, this female rage, that fights, but actually this female rage is all about, I'm not going to sacrifice myself anymore, time is over. Yeah, it's a different movie, and I feel this notes kind of what clean the locks for the new keys that are coming, and they're very, very individual, and they will need our eros, our sacred rage, our inner power and inner access and inner receptivity in a new way. So that was my part. I have something for the close later on, but we are heading towards an hour. Let's see.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a piece on Albion because I feel it's really relevant to what you've been saying as well. You know, because this is a very ancient form of shamanism, star-seeded shamanism, connected to the bear that we've talked about before, that came from Siberia and rooted itself all over the world, including Britain, actually, with Arthur, the bear, who is also Arthur, King Arthur. So it's actually a really powerful transmission still in Britain, and, you know, the Holy Grail mysteries and all of that. So this Albion, so Albion was the first TNO to be discovered, and a bit like Ceres as the first asteroid, the first TNO kind of opens the door to the rest of them. So yesterday I was looking at Albion from that kind of perspective, and one of the things that came to me about why Albion is the first is because in my kind of grid line journeys, our 26 grid line journeys in the UK, especially in Wales and Scotland, what I've really realised is that the Scottish and the Welsh, the Irish, were the first colonised people by the British, or the English, let's say. So usually we think of colonised people as, you know, being Africa or India, the Americas, but actually these parts of the UK were colonised. They went, you know, they were the first ones to have the fertile lands taken by force, to be resettled on not good land, to have their sacred places like burial sites removed from them, you know, to have their language and customs, folklore, to attempt to completely wipe those out. So this colonization story, which creates a huge kind of problem, really, because the indigenous wisdom comes to be seen as, by religion, as evil, and then by science as just nonsense. And yet it's in the indigenous wisdom that's the field of unity consciousness. It is the right brain thinking, you know, it communicates through ritual, through dance, through music. And yeah, and I was just writing about all of this yesterday, about you know, the right brain sees holistically, it understands cause and effect, whereas the left brain is very linear. It just wants to get what it can get immediately. So it creates, you know, and it kind of reinforces the survival pattern that we grab and fight and create division, and our fears of survival are even more activated when we follow the linear left brain's way of thinking. So all these trans-Neptunian bodies are calling us back into this right-brained way that the indigenous people have held on the planet for thousands of years. And you know, we know that in the Siberian shamans were really persecuted as well, but by the Buddhists actually, by and large, and then by the, you know, the Russian state. So we have kind of like a mirror story of East and West in a way. And it feels like time to reclaim these old ways, you know, this old wisdom, but it's also new wisdom, because we've had all this like left brain evolution, and now we're going into the combination. So we're going to be awesome when we're complete. That's my feeling, you know. We might go through quite a lot before we get there, but, you know, this is a really good process we're in. So yeah, I just want to finish on that, really, that, you know, I feel that Albion's very significant in this whole picture. And I was very excited that that you discovered these petrograms. Sounded like a deer led you to the place where you then saw them on the rocks, which was just like, oh, I got goosebumps reading that. So I feel like we're on the same journey on different sides of the world, which is really beautiful, actually. It shows how this unity is working, you know.
Yes, I also say something that's a big insight for me, like about this wisdom, indigenous people, right brain. I mean, for many people, and especially some psychopaths among the rest, it's like it's an empty word. It's like something small. It's something that's already past. It's something that has no application. But like my point in that, being also very left-oriented most of my life and kind of ignoring this right brain part, is that actually it's not, as I've said in the beginning, one really needs to understand that it's not even a half-half proportion. What we're talking about is like 95% against the 5%, which we call this 5%, we call the left brain, and like manipulating the matter, but actually the dark matter is the rest of the 95%. And this is what indigenous represent, and this is what right brain represents, and this is what we're actually talking about, like if we talk about percentage of, well, like wildness and structure. And it's not about repressing one or the other, like diminishing and like saying, okay, this is nonsense and this is also nonsense, like rather in the left brain side or in the right brain side. It's actually about realizing like that what we call right brain is about body and somatic principle, which is very irrational. It's like when I was walking one path where there were no people and no connection anymore, and like no one would come to me for help or the rest, like anything like that. And I was walking and a huge spider like this size jumped on my right shoulder, and I was like screaming myself out, and I was like, ah, and it was like this adrenaline rush, because like I didn't know whether that was poisonous, and I was not taught, neither by myself, neither by anyone else, how to sit with those encounters. It's like one thing when a little squirrel comes to you and make contact, and it's another when the bear comes and makes a contact with you, and it's like, okay, or the spider, what you gonna do with that little medicine that you've been presented with? So it's like This is the medicine that's so powerful, real, direct, into your body, going through all the nonsense, illusion structures. It's real. So it's not the wisdom, right brain, ulu hulu. It's real, it's direct, it's super powerful, and you cannot escape that. So, and at one time it's going to be squirrel, and at another time it's going to be bear. And there we see like how you sit and breathe with that, whether you're on the right brain or on the left brain or simultaneously on both brains. Those are not poles anymore. Those are not even percentages anymore. Those is something different, and this different is where we are heading towards as well, like quantum. And yeah, it's not somewhere there that could be comprehended, and the only thing that can comprehend it is the body, and no one knows what the body is. And this is what we're getting to know, like what's the body and where we are heading, like in this, yeah, in this new reality, in this shifting of the realities as well. So yeah, that was my point. And
wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I would have screamed as well, but you can't take away the power of those encounters. Well, you will never forget about that until you die, you know. And as I walked out on my night quest, it's interesting, you find out what you're afraid of when you do something like that. And I was having visions of like...
I'm not afraid of spiders, but that one is
yeah,
like...
yeah, no, that size one on your shoulder as well. But I was having these visions suddenly as I walked through the night of these like poodle-sized rats appearing. I'm like, breathe, breathe, you know. And it was quite funny though, because actually a friend of mine saw a rat that night. So I didn't see one, but someone I know sent me a message the next morning with a dream arc rat. And I was like, oh, okay. So, well, I'm glad I didn't have to meet a poodle-sized one to get the medicine. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've got a lot out of this podcast. I think we've really enjoyed meeting again, and I feel all buzzy, and so many ideas and information to integrate there, and to kind of really be aware of the bigger picture of what's happening. So are you complete, Katreni? Yeah? Okay, so thank you everyone, and we'll put our details in the chat below. So take care. Bye.